Okay, so I'm going to carry on with the interiors project today. So this was one that, so last week, or not last week, week before last, I did that drawing, so we did a little bit of perspective one. But I think with the painting, I'm going to use this one, so it's a slightly simpler setup. So I'll do that in a minute, so that will be water mixable oils. Also other bits to mention. So this particular one is, well, this photo didn't print very well this morning. I had real problems and everything went wrong, particularly my printer, and the colours all washed out. But that is the location that this is. So basically this fireplace and the mirror is this section. So I painted this sort of on site. So I'm going to use the colours out of this one. Sort of transposing onto that because that's the only way I can do it. Big problems with the printer this morning. Took me 3/4 of an hour, and that's all I managed to end up with.
Don't you hate technology?
I know,
but it doesn't work.
I have to get another printer, I think. It just is really playing that badly. So I had a great time in the Isle of Wight last week, and my paintings I brought in over here. So if you want to have a look at those, there's a few of those over there. So I'll start. Trips out. I sent out an email about trips out. So the first one I'm going to do is this afternoon, if anybody's interested in that. I'm just going to paint around here, or work around here. There's a couple more lined up if people are interested. So next, I think the next couple, let's see what we've got. 19th of June, which is next week. So next Monday, Thorpe Bay Beach, Hadley Castle Thursday afternoon. And then the last one I've got plans before we have a summer break is Paper Mill Lock, and that's Friday the 30th. So I know that the Paper Mill Lock one is definitely going ahead, because I've got enough people for that. The other ones I've just got a couple of people lined up so far, so if anybody is interested, that's great. If there's only one or two, I probably won't run the ones next week, but if I get a few more, they'll go ahead. Okay. Right, okay, so with this one, just sketched out in pastel pencil, and it's a matter really of getting a little bit of colour everywhere. I don't particularly, I always used to work kind of background to foreground, but nowadays I don't particularly work in any particular order. So I think maybe I'll work the background of the fireplace and perhaps these walls here. So I need something really nice and dark. So I've got some blue here, a little bit of medium. So these paints I cut out a couple of days ago, and some of them are a little bit getting a bit dried out. So blue and brown and red will just make a really dark. You can always add a little bit of green too. You know, it's not quite black, but it's virtually black in there. And I can just cut in around. So just using a nylon brush, I can cut in around the flowers themselves. There's some greenery as well there, so I'll probably pop that on wet paint into wet paint. So that white is obviously still a little bit wet. So that can be background. Let's just get a bigger brush to get that into there. Put that into there. The other thing today is I've forgotten the teas and coffees bag, which had all the pots for water pots. I've got spare tea and coffee, and I've just got one packet of biscuits and bread, so that's all I've got. But I have got spare tea and coffee, which I always keep in the car. Unfortunately, that got left behind to do as well. Right, okay, so that can be that bit. So the white, I will just go in with a little bit of pure white to start with. A couple of places. And see, if you're careful, just keep your breath. You can just sort of like just about. It's like one touch, and otherwise you pick up the paint underneath.
I was going to say it doesn't pick up that. Yeah.
You have to be sort of fresh paint, loads of brush, clean brush,
Right.
and then you can't really sort sort of overwork it, otherwise it will pick up black. Some of these got a little bit of shadow in anyway, so I have picked it up a little bit black now. I'm just gonna add a little bit of shadow into a couple of these, just a tiny bit. So some of these ones, just so they're not completely flat looking. I think when I did this demo, I didn't have the photo at all. So I just was relying on that to try and memorise. So yeah, just looking at where there's a little bit of shadow. And then for the centres, we've got a nice kind of yellowy colour, which I roughly remembered right. Adding a little bit of red to that, to make it slightly tonally darker. So yellow ochre and a bit of that. And just the corner of the brush, just to suggest those flower middles. I think with lots of subjects, try and observe differences. So if like the middle of one is slightly different to the middle of the other, try and sort of see that and to capture that. I think one of the things with, I mean, you kind of don't need to put every single detail in, but try and observe where one thing is different from another. That for me is one of the things that makes painting look a bit more believable, a bit more sophisticated. What I try and avoid is just sort of having a flower shape and just cloning it everywhere. You know, just doing a repetition of the same shapes. Try and see sort of variety. You know, some will be head on, some will be sort of like this, the side of the flower. Quite a few greens in there now. They're not very bright greens, so I'll use a mixture of yellow ochre, a tiny bit of the cadmium, and let's see what, a couple of the blues. Hopefully that'll give me a bit of green. And again, some of this is going to be a bit wet, so just a few, and perhaps some darker shade. I'll put a couple of the lighter shades, also a couple of darker shades needed in here. So let's actually go a tiny bit lighter still.
I was going to say the dark green is quite difficult to show up on the black, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. So maybe just stick with the light for a minute. That stands out more. And then you could do a few stalks as well. But that will do for the minute, and I'll just do a little bit of greens here. Actually, this pink colour I just put on there as a background colour because I just happen to have some red and some white, just cheap paint lying around to reprime these boards. But I find it quite nice for this one. I like the way it shines through slightly on the greens. And that can look quite nice, sort of layering the marks, layering the colours, so that it's not just flat and solid. So that's one thing that does appeal to me. So for this fireplace colour, I'm using some, what's this one? Cerulean blue, which is quite a greeny blue. Yep, that'll do. And a little bit medium, just so it's not too dense. That's a little bit strong actually, just a little bit of red, just to tone it down a little bit, because this was it was one of the kind of landmark trust places that, you know, so these like period colours. So just grey that down a little bit, that's a bit better. So using a little bit of magenta to slightly grey that down. So basically, if you've got a green and you want to lose the intensity of it, it's using what's opposite on the colour wheel. So using some red to tone that down. Still a bit strong, but that. So that's kind of blocked in, blocking a little bit of background. Kind of a creamy colour. So I'll use some yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt amber and some white. Tiny bit of the red. And that can go, oh, it's gone a bit green, a bit more red. So that can work into these areas. And as you know, I quite like to get some paint everywhere. then I can then see the whole balance of the whole painting before I work up too much detail. That might be a bit more detail than I needed there, to be honest. So that wants to go. Might go there. Don't know what that was doing there. I've actually sketched in a couple of chairs here, so I could sort of paint around them. And then I'll carry on with things like the mirror, just blocking that in, table surface, just kind of getting some paint everywhere. And then once that's in, I could then add a little bit more definition to any of these different areas. Might want to vary areas. So what I've talked about the variations, like here, there's obviously more. I think there's a window here, so this side is light on this side. So that might be worth just kind of lightening that up a little bit to give that sense of light coming through. And then those shadows under the mantelpiece. Green shadow. Just using a little bit of yellow and making a green, adding a little bit of red to it. Just tone that down so that can actually be a stronger shadow under there. These little details here. Bit more shadow under there. Then keep adding definition and detail where you want it. But some areas might be nice to leave a little bit less sharp, softer areas and sharper areas. So, okay, so get started. Great, okay, lovely. Yeah, what a palette, yeah. Just brought that. Brought that. Sorry about the trip hazards, I'll get rid of those now. Yeah, that's 4 hours worth. It was on a fancy bridge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I so like the view of that.
That's good.
Yeah, so that's my favourite. Sorry?
That one's my favourite.
Yeah.
I like them all, but
Yeah, thank you. One or two I'll add a little bit more to, like that one you like, Tony. A couple of people, maybe a little bit of work on the right hand side, and the beach seat next to it, because there's a few people in it.
yeah.
But by the time I got, the beach one, the tide came in, and the big went, and by the time the activity came over the lights, lighting will change so much.
Got that quickly there. So, have you not got any pots at all?
I haven't used, empty that out and use that, that's what I've used. I think we'll have to just use cups and things like that out of the kitchen. Or you can use one of mine, use some of my cups actually. Yeah, my cups used to be on there, I've got loads of cups. Yeah. Yeah, the printer problem threw me this morning. I come to the printer and then when I was driving here, I realised I haven't got anything out. I did out in the garage to keep certain things. Yeah. Yeah, all right. I think so. Okay.
Someone on one of her other accounts, someone said something negative, so she responded, and then it flagged as a, yeah, and